Welcome everyone to the second Q&A webinar event for the fall 2022 Internapalooza on networking and career planning, a topic that's gotten a lot of interest so far from what we've been hearing from all the participants. My name is Melissa Dargan, and I am the co-founder of Tour Tracker, as well as the creator of content for Congress, a YouTube series. And whether it's your first month, your first week, or you haven't even started yet in your internship, we have an amazing panel here for you to answer all your questions about internships, what to expect, and how to make the most of your experience. As a reminder, this is part of the Internapalooza, which is a collaborative project between the members of the First Branch Intern Project in cooperation with the House Select Committee on Modernization of Congress. I hope you are all having fun with the virtual resources we are putting together, and that you remember to sign up for our final event of the season, a panel and reception on the doors that that is on the congressional internship and what doors it can open for you, followed by a reception where you can put today's networking skills to work. That will be on September 16th at 5:30 p.m. in the Congressional Visitor Center, the CVC, and you can sign up at the Internapalooza fall site. With that out of the way, I'm pleased to welcome our panelists. We have an amazing group here with broad experience on all aspects of the congressional and private sector job search. So get your questions ready. We'll have plenty of time at the end to make sure you get them answered. And if you have anything burning on your mind that you don't get to, let us know or drop it in the Q&A feature on Zoom. So I just want to quickly introduce my fellow panelists. There's Tom Manitos, who is the founder of Tom Manitos Jobs, head of federal affairs for Block. And Tom can share with you his full story, but I'll give you a quick preview. He started Tom Manitos Jobs while serving as a senior advisor to Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, to help young professionals interested in politics by sending them jobs and internship opportunities, initially to his friends and later became a website. So grateful to Tom and his wife for all the work that they've done. Then there's Sat Aletti, Director of Federal Affairs and Public Policy of Allstate. Before coming to Allstate, Sat previously served as Majority Staff Director of the Subcommittee on Housing, Transportation, and Community Development under U.S. Senator Tim Scott, and a senior member of the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Then there's also Derek Harley, Republican Staff Director of the Select Committee on Modernization of Congress. Before coming to the Select Committee, Derek served as a Senior VP of Federal Affairs for Shoemaker Advisors. Previously, he spent 20 years on the Hill, including serving as Chief of Staff to Rep. Wally Herger and Rep. Brad Wenstrup. Now, I'm going to start off with Tom. You and your wife are responsible for helping a very significant percentage of professionals working in politics and politics adjacent jobs in DC land those positions. Why was this the thing that you felt important enough to start?
Well, thanks for having me. When I started it was before Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and there's really no way to find out about how to get a Capitol Hill job. There were a lot of internal email lists on Capitol Hill that shared jobs, but nothing that was blasting it to the outside world. So when I was an entry-level person on the Hill, I started forwarding them to the people that I knew that who were looking, and being in a Democratic leadership office, I was on all of those internal lists, whether it be chiefs of staff, LD, or staff assistants. But then I fell in love with a Republican, working in the Bush White House, and my wife and I decided to make it bipartisan. And the whole reason we continue to do this, even though there are other resources, is to blast out as many people as possible the opportunities, of course, that start on Capitol Hill, but then also, like you said, our Capitol adjacent, whether that's at a nonprofit, in a private sector job, campaigns, which are really the lifeblood of our democracy and the way people get to Capitol Hill. And then also local government jobs, whether that be city, municipal, or county jobs as well. But the point is that anyone who has that public policy bug, that government bug, they get on our free daily email list and they can see the job posting each morning coming through the last jobs that were posted in the last 24 hours. And then they're able to pay the small fee to see the full posting. But that's really only like 25% of the point of getting that job or getting into this world. And really 75 plus is networking. And that's why I'm so glad to be talking about that today.
Great. And a lot of the interns, they hear about these coffee chats and informational interviews. Can you cover what people mean by these and any rules that interns should follow when they approach and ask people for these informal interviews?
Sure. The whole way to network is basically buy these coffees. You don't have to actually drink coffee, but you're getting together to meet somebody, hopefully in person. If not in person, Zoom or a video chat is great. And if it's a last resort, a phone call. But the point is you need to build a whole network that you can rely upon to recommend you for an internship or a job, that can send you internship or job opportunities, or help you along the way think it through and advise you throughout that process. And the only way to do that is there are a few ways. One, going to a reception and meeting people, being at a social event like a softball game or a kickball game in DC, or the traditional way is to ask people to coffee. And instead of me just emailing Derek out of the blue saying like I'm looking for a job, you usually want to go to like what makes you you. So where's your hometown? What college did you go to? What was your graduate school? What ethnicity are you? What religion are you? What fraternity sorority are you? Any type of commonality that I can email Derek or Sat with, being like, in my case, when I was looking for a job on Capitol Hill, I'm a part of this very small Greek American community in the United States. I found every Greek American on Capitol Hill and I emailed them, hey, we're both Greek descent, let's get coffee. Or I'm looking for a job, can I just bend your ear for 10 or 15 minutes to find out how you got a job or your career path. And keep in mind, every single person you're emailing did the exact same thing you were doing to them, or are continuing to do for them to succeed in their keep going in their career path. Whether it's the chief of staff in Senator McConnell's office or the chief of staff at the White House, they were all in your shoes as well. And they all do the same thing. So you're not interrupting people, you're not bothering them. It's just a part of the game. And after you do reach out and talk to them, you're very grateful for their time. You always follow up with, at the very end, a thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much. Who else would you recommend I talk to? Now, they might connect you with another person of the same hometown or the same state or the same college, or they might connect you for a whole different reason with somebody else based off your conversation. But then you always email that person with a thank you note with your resume attached, because you never know who they might send your resume to. And then you remind them in that email who they promised to connect you with. So you start those conversations, those coffees, here's your hometown strand, here's your college strand, here's your ethnicity strand. And all those lead to different conversations because you're getting an additional person to talk to at the end of every one of those. And you have this huge web of people that you've connected with through those coffees, but you're documenting the people you talk to in a spreadsheet. You're taking notes on what they tell you, their emails, even if you happen to get their phone number, so that you can check back in with them at the right time to either ask them for their help, recommending you for an internship or a job, or just staying connected with them.
Great pieces of advice. And then in terms of, for instance, the reception that's coming up September 16th, plug, if you guys want to attend, make sure you sign up. Any advice for interns who are planning on attending the reception and, going up to somebody they don't know can be a little bit daunting? Any tips there?
It totally can. I mean, we've had great similar Internapalooza panels where someone said, literally just walk into a room at a congressional reception and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, what's your name? And that's not weird. Like in other places that might be unusual or weird, but that's very common here. So have that confidence that that's okay to do. But also those people are there to network with you too. I mean, networking is a two-way street. There are multiple instances where all of us on this panel, I'm sure, have either lobbied people or been connected with people that were people that we had helped with in the past, or they've helped us in the past, vice versa. I mean, there's this multiple great stories of members of Congress who were interns for the people that they're now lobbying, and that former intern is now a member of Congress. So it's a two-way street. Have that confidence that everyone's there people are in this business to meet people and enjoy talking to people and enjoy giving advice. So don't try not to be too afraid of it.
Great. And then Tom, will get back to you again, but maybe I want to ask the other panelists to also weigh in. What's the biggest misconceptions that you've heard from young people as they start their career planning in politics? Sot, Derek, anything to add there?
I jump in with two, and thanks for having me, Melissa, and good to be with Derek and Tom. And just for anyone who's watching this call for the 50 interns, I mean, one of you is going to be a member of Congress in 5 years. One of you is going to be a legislative director in 3 years. Washington is the town where your intern one day is going to be your boss the next day. So be kind to people on the way up, because you're going to see them on the way down. That's the number one lesson I try to impress upon you. I think two misconceptions folks have when they're starting their career in politics or policy. Number one, the first job that you take is going to be what you do for the next 40 years of your career. I'm here to tell you that it is not. You're looking for a foothold. You're looking to get your foot in the door. You're looking to pick up some basic skills. And despite, the West Wing episodes that you've watched, you're not going to be writing a bill for the President of the United States on your first day in your first job in your career. So look for a position that's going to teach you the basics, that's going to allow you to expand your skill set and your network, and understand that a lot of the first jobs in policy and politics are only going to be your position for, half a year, a year and a half, and you're going to move on to bigger and better. So that's number one. Second misconception I hear from young people a lot who are coming to DC is that, you have to be the congressman's grandson, or you have to be the big donor's nephew. And I like to say that Washington, D.C. is probably the last meritocracy out there. I mean, I came to D.C. when I was 21. I did not know a single person in town. I'm an immigrant. I'm a child of immigrants. My parents are not politically active at all. And I was able to have a successful career and work on Capitol Hill for 3 different members of Congress and try to make it work on a $27,500 a year salary, which is not easy. But I truly believe that this is still an environment where if you put in the work, if you're eager, if you ask questions, and you're willing to pay your dues, you will find success.
Awesome. Anything to add to that, Derek?
I love that line, Sot, about the last meritocracy. I think that's I've not heard that, and I agree wholeheartedly. Tom, your rundown on networking was perfect. You hit all the points. I'd say a couple things. One, just to emphasize one of the things he said about when you're reaching out to people, he said, talk about your personal characteristics. I always call it finding a hook, because the people who will receive your email, the people like me who are sitting at their desk, you receive lots of emails from people who would like to get your advice and guidance. So you want to be able to sort of stand out, make it more likely that they're going to pull your email out from the shelf. Because even for someone like me who likes to sit down with everybody, you just really don't have time. So to find that hook, like, hey, we went to the same school, or hey, I'm from, the similar district, anything like that, or even the ideal is, this is where the networking comes in, the friend of a friend. Hey, so-and-so, your friend so-and-so recommended I connect with you. Anything to kind of make you stand out, give that person a reason to want to sit down with you. And the other point I emphasize too is, and this should give you confidence when you're reaching out, everybody's been in this situation. I'm one who believes networking works in any and every profession, business, law, maybe even medicine, but it really works here because it is a relationship business. And like Tom said and Sot said, almost everybody that you're going to sit down with did the same thing that you're doing. So they understand, and the really good ones understand the importance of what Sot said is every relationship is a good one. So the only misconception I would say is that networking doesn't work. It does. It really does. I would say when I talk to people about looking for jobs, I say it's an all of the above approach. Do it all. Yes, apply to the job listing. Yes, look online. Just don't let those things be your sole source. You've got to get yourself out there. And when you're going through the networking process, I mean, I knew I did this, and to Scott's point earlier, I came to DC and I had no contacts. I made a network completely from scratch. And it gets frustrating when you're going through it, right? Because it can take some time. So you're going through, you're having these great coffees. Some of them are going great. Some of them are not so great. Sometimes people aren't getting back to you. And you're asking yourself, how is this moving the ball down the field? How am I getting to my goal of getting a job? Sometimes it felt like it was never going to happen. I was just here to tell you it works. You have to keep at it. Know it's getting every relationship, if you're continuing to do the right things and the follow-up that Tom talked about, keeping track of what you're doing those thank you notes. The idea is you're trying to get yourself and build relationships, build this network of people that when somebody sees something, they think of you. Okay. And all of a sudden, then that network that you've built then becomes, some of those people are going to become your source of advice and guidance. Some of those people that you met along the way, you're going to call and say, hey, what do you think of this spot? And then it's going to come full circle and you're going to have this aha moment. And so now I know how this works. And what you also find too, and I found some of the people I networked with 25 years ago are my friends to this day. So think about it in good faith too. Don't think about it cynically, like what can these people do for me? You're developing relationships, you're getting to know people, you're developing friendships. And so look at it that way, and that can make the outreach easier for you.
A very good point. And I just want to say, I mean, going back almost a decade now, I'd worked with SOT for Representative Royce way back when in the House side, and we've still remained friends today. I mean, I just invited him to my wedding in Ireland. And so to your point, like the relationships you build early on last for a while. And even with Tom and you, Derek, like we have come through where we have crossed paths in different capacities. Tom and I have done videos on how to maximize DC networking, which I'll add to the chat in case you guys are interested and want to delve more in. And then with Derek, I had been a witness for one of the modernization hearings that they had. So I do want to emphasize the point to all of the interns that are currently on this call, like you may not see it now or immediate, but it also in the long term, a lot of the relationships that you build and start to facilitate do circle back. And for all three of you, you have made the transition back and forth from the Hill public sector to the private sector. And Sot, I want to start with you on this. Can you speak to how an internship in Congress can help interns who may be looking to get into the private sector?
Sure. I mean, I interned in the summer of 2010, 2 weeks out of undergrad. I was barely past my 21st birthday. And, the game has changed. Now, when I look at resumes, people have had, 5 or 6 internships, even in college. Believe it or not, I didn't do my first internship until I had graduated college, which is almost unheard of nowadays. But, it was my first real office job. And it taught me so much. I mean, I feel like in that 3 months, I learned more than I'd learned in 4 years of undergrad. It taught me, how to operate in an office, how to multitask, how to deliver under fire, writing skills. When I thought about my college writing experience, it was, all right, you have 4 weeks to write this 30-page paper and do citations. That skill I learned in my adult life is like never useful unless you want to become a college professor. Like an internship on Capitol Hill taught me how to write quickly with brevity, how to express complex thoughts in basic language. I mean, you could do that internship and then never work in politics and policy for the rest of your career, and it'll still be so helpful with those foundational skills. And it's a great launching pad to go to business school, go to law school, start your career in the private sector, just based on that alone. I think if you can learn how to write and communicate, you're golden. Anything you want to do in the private sector.
Great. And Tom and Derek, do you have anything to add in terms of the transition back and forth and any advice you would have?
I just say that the Hill is a great place to learn. You can afford, when you're younger, you can afford to make less money. You can afford usually to work longer hours. So I always push people to try to go to the Hill first to get that experience. And also that is what the private sector is looking for many different roles. If you want to stay in DC, is that experience. I mean, go talk to President Trump and President Obama and see how successful they are without Capitol Hill. I mean, the executive branch is fun and it makes a difference in our government, but things start and die on Capitol Hill in terms of major policy. So that's where I'm biased, but I think that's such a great place for folks to start, even if it's just an internship. And then if you want to get there in your entry level jobs and go up through the ranks there are plenty of people to go back and forth. The only flag I'll put out there is that you're usually paid more to work less in the private sector. So sometimes it's hard financially or to wrap your head around to go back inside, but it's done all the time. And people really enjoy that flexibility.
Great. And then another question is, this is what gets asked from interns all the time in terms of networking feeling too transactional. And it was mentioned a little bit earlier on this call or on this panel, but do you have any advice for people who may worry that they want to stay true to themselves while still networking?
I have a controversial answer on this. Are you ready?
Go.
I don't think being transactional is a bad thing. Like, transactional has a very negative connotation to it. And I think if both parties are approaching a conversation or engagement with kind of a realistic idea of what each party is seeking, I think that's totally fine. Like, when an intern hits me up for a coffee, like, I know what it's about. I know it's not because they want to talk to me because of my sparkling personality and amazing good looks. Like, I know they're looking for me to put them in touch with some of my colleagues, or they're interested in a job at Allstate, or they're looking for advice on Capitol Hill. And that's okay. I mean, I come to that engagement with the same understanding. And quite frankly, intern John Smith, if I help you get your first job on Capitol Hill, then you're some superstar professional staff member 6 years from now, I'm not going to hesitate to come and lobby you if that's what I'm doing in my career, right? And that's just as transactional also. But I think as long as you're honest, transparent, you communicate on what it is you're looking for out of these engagements, there's nothing wrong with it being transactional. I mean, it is a network. A network is literally built up of social transactions, right? I mean, relationships are kind of the web, and you're going to have those transactions every day. And, for people that have had a long-term career in Washington, you totally understand that. So transactional is not bad. I suppose that's my thesis.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Sad on that at all. I mean, I think everybody gets the game, and I don't say game in a cynical way. I mean, everyone gets the drill. Like I said before, too, just give yourself confidence because everybody's been there. Everybody had to move to DC, sleep on a couch, pizza and internship receptions to make it. My biggest piece of advice is just keep that in mind. You remember that people's time is valuable, right? You're asking for something. You just are, right? You're asking for their time. So be very appreciative. I mean, that gets back to the basics. I say, what did your mama teach you? Thank you, the little stuff. I mean, I approached it based on a piece of advice I got from one of my law school professors when I was picking up from Ohio and moving back here with a clean slate. When I reached out, I would try to find that hook, like I talked about earlier, trying to increase the chances that someone's going to get back to me. I would always ask, could I have, like Sat said, everybody, I recently moved to the area. I'm looking for an opportunity. Could I have 10 to 15 minutes of your time for your advice and guidance? And I would really approach it like that. And I would really think about it like that. And I would say I would do more listening than talking. I would be trying to ask as many questions as you can. Look at it as a legitimate opportunity to learn from somebody about how they not just how they made their way on the Hill, or what advice that they do have for someone like yourself, but take the opportunity to learn a little bit about the job that they do. Because part of this process too, I think, is you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that you want to do. And that's okay. I mean, even though you want to be on the Hill, there's so many different avenues up here that you could pursue. And learning about people's experiences and how they got there and what they like about their job can be super helpful to you as you kind of go along your path and try to figure it out that you want to do. My last piece of advice too is I don't know what people think about this. I kind of equate networking to dating, right? It's like there's like a feel, right? So like sometimes you're going to go in there, and generally speaking, I just don't ask for stuff, okay? I do not go in there and say, can you help me find a job? Can you help me do this? Can you do that for me? The only thing you might ask for at the end, and you're trying to expand your network. So what I would do is, if the interaction was a good one, if you could tell that the person, again, you got to get the feel. Like I said, we're sort of like, you just get the feel for the situation. Is the person engaging? Do they seem to look like they want to help me? Is this going really well? Are you sort of, do you see some sort of touch tones in terms of commonality? If it's feeling pretty good at the end, I would say, do you have, 2 or 3 names of people that you would suggest I get in touch with? And then you use that to sort of expand. I did that multiple different times. Sometimes they won't give it to you. Sometimes they will. That'll be the one thing that I would say, if it's going well, that would be the one ask. Otherwise, you're literally there because the goal is to build a relationship, to get them to like you, to be aware of you, to think about you when they hear about something in the future. So there'll be a contact for you. And then that is where the art of the networking comes in as well. We can talk about that. The science is sort of getting in there in the first place, getting that email, getting the hook, getting to sit down, getting that 10 to 15 minutes. But then the art comes in later because as time goes on, you're going to want to maintain those contacts. And that's where we can talk about how do you sort of maintain those contacts going forward, because you want to stay top of mind with them so that 3 months down the road, they don't forget about you when that opportunity comes up and they don't think about you. You want to sort of find a way to be top of mind.
Melissa, if I could just build on that, I mean, exactly what these guys said. Just know that it's, and someone asked in the chat, it's not being greedy. This is how this, not only does this industry work, newsflash, it's how all industries work. My friends in sales, my friends in banking, my friends in healthcare, they all have to network to some extent to help their career and help their job. So this is just like adult stuff. So don't think that this is a bad thing or there's some bad connotation to it. Also, if you're still uncomfortable, be deferential to that person and what Derek just said with their time and thanks. And do the groundwork ahead of time so you're not wasting their time in that conversation. So look them up on LinkedIn, figure out their career paths. You're not saying, so how'd you get your start on Capitol Hill? You could have known that by a couple Google searches, right? But what you're there to ask is their advice, learn from them how they got their job, which is not public information, and learn from them. That's people in basic human nature. People like talking about themselves, not just in politics, literally everywhere. When I meet someone, I'm just a listener, and people walk away with a good perception of me because they've talked about themselves the whole time. It's basic human nature. So you're doing this. It's not an unpleasant experience for this individual. They feel like they're helping someone. This one thing about politics, people are in this to make a better world, a better America, a better community. So if they're helping somebody in a very pay it forward way, in the same way that somebody helped them when they were in your shoes, they're going to feel better about it. So you're not putting them out. You're not greedy. You're not compromising your principles or whatever. You're just simply making a connection to help further your career. And it actually might help that individual at some point as well.
Really great points. And I did want to reference something, especially for anybody who's currently on this panel. If you have any questions that you would like answered that we haven't touched upon yet, please go ahead and ask that in the chat, on the Zoom chat, and we will get to that in just a moment. I did want to follow up with Derek in terms of, as you're the Republican staff director on the Select Committee on Modernization, and the ModCom has really focused in on explicitly, strengthening Congress through having interns and fellows. Can you talk a bit about why it is so important for the Modernization Committee to focus in that area?
Sure. Yeah, so for those who don't know, the Modernization Committee is a select committee. So it's a temporary committee that Congress formed to see if we could find a way to make the place work better, to make it stronger. Is there things that happen from time to time, every 20 or 30 years? Congress will put one of these things together. Sometimes it's House focused, sometimes it's joint with Senate. This is the latest iteration. One of the things that we focus on is staff capacity. We're trying to strengthen the institution, right? And as we know, the institution is only as strong as, obviously the members, but the staff who supports them. So we spend a lot of time on, and what you've seen a lot of, to me, which is sort of troubling, is a lot of the power sort of migrating over to the executive branch. How do we keep Congress strong, being able to do its Article I functions? And I think for too long, we haven't been investing in Congress enough as an institution. So the more we do that, the stronger we get, and staffing is part of that. So we spend a lot of time on how do we improve staff recruitment? How do we continue to bring the best and brightest here? How do we keep them here longer? There is some numbers about the retention in terms of the turnover. I think it's, a couple of years, 2.5 to 4 years or something. People come up, they get their experience and they go. How do you keep people here longer so that you maintain that experience, that institutional knowledge that makes the institution stronger? Some of it's pay, of course, but as we know, no one does this for the money. So are there some other things that we can do to try to, work flexibility, different benefit programs to keep people who are doing the jobs that they love, but you don't want them having to leave too soon because they have to take a job in the private sector. So those are some of the things that we've looked at. And on the recruitment side, we've looked at internships and fellowships specifically because that just is the traditional pipeline for the future staffers. As everybody said here, and I've always said, today's intern is tomorrow's chief of staff, and that is literally the case. And people are attracted to this business and these jobs for a particular type of reason. not because, it's usually never money related. They want to come up here because they have a passion for the place. They want to make a difference. And so we spent some time trying to figure out how do we broaden the net of the people that can come up here and be a part of the process through interning. How do we recruit them to come? How do we provide stipends that are of a level that people can afford to come here in the summer and pay for housing, pay for food, et cetera, to be able to serve, because it's an expensive place to be. It used to be the case that no one got paid for internships. In fact, my 20 years here, mostly it was paid internships for just one thing. You just made a sacrifice, if someone paid for you to come, whatever. Well, not everybody can do that. So the more that we can professionalize that, provide funding for stipends, paid internships, the broader pool, hopefully bring people in here that come, they get fired up about the place, they learn, they want to stay, they want to come back later. So that's sort of its own, to me, it's the internship is obviously it's an experience for the intern themselves, but it's also a recruitment tool for the institution in terms of that next generation of leaders and staffers who are going to serve.
I mean, makes a lot of sense. And I think I even heard earlier, right? Like SOT came to Washington, D.C., didn't really know anyone, like very low pay for even with like interns before when we were all taking internships unpaid. So want to thank very much the Select Committee on Modernization, because I think as we progress and move forward, this is going to be helpful to the new generation of congressional staffers with that focus. And because I know that there's a ton of interest on today's topic, I want to reiterate, if you have any questions, feel free to add it into the chat. And I will start to dive into a couple of the questions that were submitted into us. One of which is, great, we're talking about networking, right? But where do interns go to find networking events? How can they hear about it? What's the best way for them to find out these events to even just show up at?
I'm happy to jump in. I think, number one, and I think back to even my internship days, but certainly the staff that you're interning with, I mean, staff generally tended to forward on invitations, let us know when things were going on. There are listservs and other resources out there that you can sniff out. In particular, if anyone gets in touch with me after this, I'm happy to make sure you're on some listservs in terms of good events. Most of the states have pretty active state societies. So if you're a Californian, if you're a Texan, if you're from Connecticut, you've got in-house, ingrown group that's going to put on social events. So make sure you seek out your state society. And then there's all kinds of things. I mean, like if you're a tennis player, like Congressional Tennis Association, I know they let interns play. Great. Like you're playing tennis and you're meeting, a bunch of staffers and things like that on a regular basis. So think about, if you're Greek American, I'm sure there's Tom maybe can confirm there's a Hellenic Congressional Association. I'm sure there is one, like think about things like that. Think about your personal background and your interests and pursue those.
Yeah, everyone's from somewhere else in this town, and even those of us that are local get together because we're all locals. I mean, there's that natural convening that Sat just talked about that is so key, and that there's and as we're coming out of the COVID era, there are going to be more and more receptions. On any given night, there are probably 25 or more receptions on Capitol Hill happening. And literally you walking in sometimes is totally acceptable and fine, and just meeting people there. Because if you're somebody who's representing a House or Senate office, they're welcoming you. They'd love to have you there. Now, you just want to make sure that's like appropriate for whatever office you're working in, which it usually is, because people understand that that's a great way to get to know people and network.
Great. I will say too, sometimes when you question, oh, like, am I on the list? There have been multiple instances where I know people and myself have just walked right in feeling like I owned the place, and as if like nobody questioned you walking through the door. So I would say if you find an event on Capitol Hill, there's so many different reception rooms. In some cases, if you're interested in just going in and there's nobody questioning you or has like a strict list, feel free to walk right in, because sometimes it's just showing up and meeting people that really can make the difference from what I've seen. There is another question where we've seen that for interns in partisan offices, obviously we know politics can be divided. Is it worth for them to build bipartisan relationships and networks?
Absolutely. Like, we are in a hyper partisan, probably the worst partisan Congress that any of us on this call have ever witnessed. And that's nothing's going to change about that. But also look at the major pieces of legislation. They require 60 votes in the Senate. You have to have bipartisan buy-in on any to do anything, whether you're on Capitol Hill or off Capitol Hill. And the pendulum swings. We are in a complete Democratic run government. When I started in politics, it was 4 years of complete Republican run government. It just swings back and forth. You need to know people on both sides, no matter what you're doing in this world. And the more relationships you have that are broader in scope, so that what that means is not only both parties, but outside your congressional delegation. If you're serving in the California delegation, don't only know people in California offices, know people in New York and Oregon and Oklahoma. The more the diversity of the people you know in this world, the better you are to be able to not only do your job, but also get future jobs and internships down the road.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I swim in bipartisan world here at the committee, and I mean, I grew up in partisan offices, and I agree. I think the institution. I'm not one to say that the partisanship is unprecedented, because I think it's always been a fiery place, but it is heightened right now, and that's not just at the member level. That's at the staff level too, and I think that's on all of us to try to fix. I think it disheartens me when I see or sense that offices are concerned or unwilling to reach out to people on the other side of the aisle, because it's going to be on all of us to fix it. And we're all Americans and we all share the same goal. I think we just differ on how to get there. When I talk to chiefs of staff, I say to them, you need to lead by example. You need to show your staff how important it is for the institution. Obviously for yourself personally, because for anyone to get anything done in this town as you go along, you're going to have to know people on both sides of the aisle. But for the institution, it behooves all of us to get to know each other and understand each other. And so I can't encourage you more to look for opportunities to do that. It's the more we know each other. So we have to agree on everything, but the more we know each other as people, and in a sort of an informal, personal way, the stronger the institution is going to be. So I encourage everybody to really make that a priority among what you're doing.
Great. And then I know that you had mentioned, Tom had mentioned, thank you notes after an informational interview and a follow-up are important. For people who want to write thank you notes after the internship, is that something that they should do? Is it something, and if so, is it something that they should just do to their supervisor or everybody in the office? What is the conventional understanding of like thank you notes and best practice?
Sorry, I'm going to jump all over this one because I'm a big believer in thank you notes. Like, literally everyone you worked with in that office, I don't care if you had 2 conversations with them, you send a thank you note, because you never know if they're going to be an advocate for you in the future. And the best person, in my opinion, that I can rely upon when I'm applying for a job is someone that worked with me. So the coffees help, the networking helps, but if that individual can say to their friend, I worked with her, she was fantastic, I have actually witnessed her work product and her hard work, you should hire her, that goes farther than anything else. And who better to validate that work for you in the future than the people you worked with as an intern? So thank you notes, literally no one, and I mean no one, does handwritten thank you notes anymore. So if you really wanted to stand out, drop off a batch of handwritten thank you notes to the office that you just worked in. But definitely emails, constant email communication. I think Derek was going to get into that at some point, but frequent email communication with those folks to remind them that you exist, to remind them that you're looking for a job. But yeah, there's no one I wouldn't write a thank you note to, including every single person that you get coffee with.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the thank you note too. I think and the handwritten thank you note is great. You don't get them too much anymore, and like Tom said, when you do get them, it does make you stand out. And here I would point out too, and this might be a question we're going to get to later, but you have to understand that interning itself is networking per se, right? Being in there, you're meeting people. And so we'll talk later maybe about the balance you have to strike about doing really well at your internship versus getting out there to network at the same time, doing both. But here's a perfect example of when you're in the office, being at your best in a sincere, good faith way to impress the people that that you're working with, because that office is going to be the source of your future recommendations. Like Tom said, if you do get a job opportunity, that other office is going to reach out and say, hey, how was that person as an intern? And if you do those little things, I know for me, if I saw that, I appreciate that, because that tells me this is an intern that understands the details, that takes the time to say thank you. And those details in this business, all that stuff really matters. And so you do something like that, really makes you stand out, and shows that you kind of get it and can be very helpful to you in the future.
Great. And then we've talked about a lot of the things that interns should do when it comes to networking. Now I just want to flip the script a little bit. What are some, based on some of your reflections, lessons that you've learned that interns should avoid, or interactions that have not gone well during networking that they should be aware of and have a flag for? So what's something that they should not do while interning or while networking?
You should not email me just once. Email me twice, email me 3 times. Like, I get lost in my email, as Derek referenced. Like, we get hundreds of emails a day. Be persistent, follow up. You're not going to go on some universal blacklist of annoying interns that emails twice. So follow up with me. Don't, again, as Tom referenced earlier, like, you know, we live in an era where I have LinkedIn. I have my entire resume posted on the internet for anyone to see. They can find it in 2 seconds, right? So, like, instead of asking me questions that you already know the answer to, think about more of the insightful, quote unquote, behind the scenes things that you want to get at. So again, don't ask basic biographical information. And then I think the third thing I tell you guys, like, you know, it's going to shock you how quickly you are going to be the ones that are getting the emails for coffees. Like, we talked a lot about paying it forward during this conversation. So make sure you treat people how you wanted to be treated.
A don't would be don't not show up. Like, I've had people schedule time with me, and I don't get a call, or they stood me up or just forgot about it. Like, automatic terrible representation of yourself. And I actually had one guy like then email me profusely apologizing, and then he didn't show a second time, and then like he emailed me again, and that just like went right in the trash. Just be respectful of people's time. Like, thank them, because like I think both Derek and Saad said, like, we get hundreds of emails a day. We're extremely busy people, and no matter who you are in DC, you think you're the busiest person in the city. So just like pay that respect and recognize they're giving you some of their time, and don't do anything that would counter that.
Yeah, another thing I'd say, just don't get frustrated. Like I said earlier, just recognize it takes time. I mean, a good networking process can take months and months. It took me 6, 8, 9 months to find something through steady persistence. Some people won't get back to you. They just won't. That used to frustrate me to no end. I mean, people who I went to the same college with, whatever, you email them once, crickets, email them twice, crickets. You know, people that you think would be a real easy slam dunk. You know, don't get frustrated by that. Just go ahead and move on. Don't let it hurt your confidence. Don't make it feel, oh gosh, I did something wrong, I'm bothering somebody. To me, that's on that person. To me, that's somebody that doesn't understand how the town works. Because everybody that wants to talk to me, I see as an opportunity to get to know somebody else that could be helpful to me in the future too. So package it. Don't let it get you down. You know, get tried, file it away, move on to the next person. Just keep your chin up.
Great things to avoid. And in terms of individuals who feel like imposter syndrome while working in Congress, can any of you speak to that and how to move past it or manage that, given, you know, the feeling of like everybody else is just doing and experiencing, or just has like all of these other support that they may feel they're lacking? How do you approach the imposter syndrome, and how do you move past it?
I mean, I suppose it took me a while to learn in Washington, but like, I finally learned you'll never win the credential game. There's no winning it. Like, you could be like a master's in Russian literature from Harvard, and then the guy sitting next to you at the table will have his PhD in Russian literature from Harvard, right? So, I mean, at some point in time, it's just a recognition that you know what you know what you don't know. you can, you learn, you tell the congressman, hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll get it for you. And you just kind of come to an understanding that there are people from all kinds of backgrounds and educational experiences and work experiences and life experiences that have come together to help in the governance of our country. And everyone's got something valuable to contribute. But yeah, if you're trying to win the credential game, like, you never will in Washington. There's no winning it. Like that's kind of the joke. Like, and it takes a while to get it. But once you do, I think you just realize, like, do your best, be earnest, work hard, and be good to people, and it'll work itself out.
Great. And then one last question is there any advice for individuals and interns working in district offices? And is there any insight on how networking is different, especially for the individuals in district offices and or ones who are going to be doing virtual internships?
I'm not a big fan of virtual internships. I sort of think it's an oxymoron. I think it's got to be very difficult to be successful and do all the things you need to do virtually. I understand sometimes it's just not possible, but I would sort of push as much as you can to be and do something in person. District office internships are a little bit of a different ball of wax. I think they're still important. I think in many ways they're easier, right? Sort of what I talked about earlier. I mean, if it's difficult for you to get back to DC to find a way, interning in a district office is the next best way to do it. I think the best thing to do to take advantage of it is just to try to continue. You're not going to be on the hill, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to sort of do a bigger networking sort of thing to expand your opportunities there. I mean, you're in the district office. I would just think, again, apply the same principle. Just do the best job you can. Like Scott said, I mean, the biggest thing you can do to differentiate yourself from everybody else is just doing the basics really well, staying humble, being willing to do whatever project, learning as much as you possibly can. I would, take opportunities to get coffee with each of the people in the office. They're apt to be a little bit slower. Learn about what they do. Try to find as much as you can about every aspect of the district office operation. Maybe it's something that you could see yourself doing in the future. If there are opportunities to go to events, to volunteer, to help, maybe the congressman has a town hall or something, you could volunteer to be part of that or learn. I mean, or some of the things that the congressman's do in the district, look for opportunities to go out and about, because you'll learn about the operation, how it works, and get to know people there as well. So I think it's just doing the basics, looking for opportunities to learn and trying to network out there as much as you can.
Great. And thank you all so much, one, for the thoughtful questions that were submitted, and also to our panelists for the insights that you guys have shared. And just to wrap up, we'll do a lightning round for our panelists on, I know we talked a lot about networking and the different things that interns should do, but if there's one piece of advice, if you could give yourselves who was just starting out, so, like 10, 15 years ago, if you were to talk to yourself to give them one piece of advice to leave off with, what would that be? In like 5 seconds or less. Tom, go.
Hard work, attention to detail, show up early, stay late.
Great. Sat, next.
It's easier to take risks earlier in your career than later in your career. So do it while you're young.
Awesome. And Derek.
Pinch yourself every day. It's the greatest institution and the greatest republic that's ever existed on the face of the earth. Be fired up about being there, and a chance to give back, and appreciate every moment.
Great summary. And thank you all for generously volunteering your time and expertise. I know that for me, I learned something new on this panel. I hope all of the interns who are on here also have good takeaways. And just remember, for the interns who want to sign up for a in-person reception on September the 16th, be sure to do so. It's going to be in the Capitol Visitor Center, or in the Congressional Visitor Center. And if you run into any issues, feel free to message the Internapalooza team, where you can send the email to info@popvox.org. Thanks again to our panelists, and good luck to everyone on their upcoming internships this fall. Thank you and goodbye.